You talked with
An hour now, and it may well be that they were rushed on as soon as the plane landed. But if so, we were not able to see that, and so we cannot confirm it. So we have to, at least at this point, assume that they are still not on the plane. They are either waiting in vehicles or in a building, perhaps the airport, waiting to board this plane. The plane is being refueled, and once it is refueled, as you've been hearing, it will fly. It will fly to Guam in the Pacific, about a 4 or 5 hour flight, and then on to Hawaii. And you've been listening to Jamie McIntyre talk about, and Lisa Rose Weaver, our reporter who's there on the ground at Hainan Island, talk about what these crew members will be dealing with and what they'll have available to them after this plane takes off. CNN's David Ensor is at the State Department now, where, David, I'm assuming the folks at State are just as interested as the folks at the White House.
Well, I think you can assume the televisions are all on this channel. They usually are, quite frankly, in this building. But yes, they will be watching this just as closely as we are. As we were saying earlier, there are things they don't want to talk about in much detail until they see that plane taking off. This is the big one. This is getting the American crew members out safely. And once that is dealt with, then there are some other aspects of how this has gone and the language of the letter and so on that they may want to get into. I'd like to just pick up, if I may, if I have a moment here, on something Jamie McIntyre was talking about, which is the EP-3 and the question of surveillance flights along the coast of China. The U.S. position is that those flights are going to continue. I'm sure they are going to continue. And one of the points that that officials make is that they really think the Chinese shouldn't be so deeply opposed to these flights, given that, well, if you look back at the Cold War, it was the transparency of first U-2 flights and other kinds of surveillance aircraft, and then of satellites, that led to the U.S. and Russia understanding where each other stood and feeling a little less threatened, a little bit safer. And a certain amount of transparency about what it is exactly China is doing along its coast opposite Taiwan and to the south, it could be argued is good for everybody, certainly for Taiwan and China, to know that the Chinese are not massing to attack Taiwan. That's something Taiwan wants to know on a daily basis and relies on U.S. intelligence aircraft and satellites to tell it. So it lowers tensions in the area if the U.S. surveillance aircraft are still flying in international airspace along the coast of China. It's something the U.S. strongly believes it needs to keep doing, and certainly the Japanese and Taiwanese and a lot of others in the neighborhood want those flights to continue.
All right, David Ensor at the State Department today. And David, as you were talking, again, we're watching a little more activity there at the foot of the stairs leading up to the plane, but again, certainly no confirmation yet that these 24 crew members are on board, or even confirmation that they are at the airport, but some indication that perhaps they were in the convoy of cars we saw moving toward the airport a little while ago. As we continue to watch this picture, and as you can see, our camera is from quite some distance away, and that's why the picture is not any clearer than it is, but you can see people there at the foot of the stairs. Let's joining us now on the telephone, CNN State Department correspondent Andrea Koppel. She is in Paris, where she's been traveling with the Secretary of State, Colin Powell. Andrea, what are they saying there about all this?
Well, Judy, much as we've heard from both David, Jamie, and Kelly, they too are waiting to see the 24 crew members get on that plane and land safely in Guam and then eventually in Hawaii before they get into any kind of specifics. But there are some State Department officials who are saying that this really is, if in fact this gets off without a hitch, that this really is diplomacy when it works well. We've just witnessed it over the last 11 days, the art of choosing just the right words, and there's a real feeling of satisfaction and in some instances joy to think that they were able to work out the right formula to get those 24 people off the island. And they also say that 11 days may seem like a terribly long time to those of us who are watching this and covering this day by day, but really when you think about it in terms of the way that the Chinese society and the Chinese culture usually operates, this was almost warp speed. The fact that they were able to get this through the Chinese bureaucracy and to get the collective leadership to sign off on this language was really something that they see as a small triumph. And the language, of course, very important. The fact that the U.S. did not come out accepting any kind of culpability for this, didn't formally apologize, and one might say, isn't it splitting hairs when you say that you're very, very sorry? But that's what diplomacy is all about. It's picking the right words, and it's legalistic in some ways. And so, Judy, they're feeling a real sense of satisfaction, kind of fingers crossed, holding their breath, waiting to see, as the rest of us are, those men and women get on board the plane.
Andrea, let me also ask you, as CNN's former Beijing bureau chief and someone who reported from China for a number of years, someone who speaks fluent Mandarin, talk for just a moment about the importance to the Chinese that the United States said it was sorry that this plane violated Chinese airspace without clearance. To many people in the United States, that seemed to be an odd thing because the plane had to land somewhere, or else it was going to crash into the ocean. But explain to us why perhaps that was so important to the Chinese.
Well, really, for about 150 years, the Chinese people felt that they lived through a period of tremendous humiliation where they had foreign countries, foreign powers who were occupying their country. And they, in the last, let's say, 50 years, really, just since the communist revolution there, have been gradually, in a very slow, painstaking way, rebuilding that confidence and that sense of national pride that they had lost for so many years. And if many people remember back to the handover of Hong Kong in 1997, that was a huge point of pride for the Chinese people to get back a piece of land that they felt had been taken from them by the British. And in this case, Judy, this is China has a real chip on its shoulder as far as being the largest, most populous country in the world, but it's tremendously poor and in many parts of the countryside tremendously backwards. And yet at the same time, it's a country that has grown by leaps and strides over the last 20 years since the opening and reform began there. And so there's sort of this tug of war going on within the leadership. On the one hand, wanting to be treated like a great power, but then on the other hand, recognizing that in comparison with the United States, it isn't. And so that's a rather long-winded way of answering your question, but the fact that you would have the United States able to run these spy planes, these surveillance flights, nearby, and obviously has the technology to do it, and the Chinese do not, was something that was embarrassing to them. And when they had this plane literally sort of land in their laps, there was quite a bit of, we saw it ourselves, just they didn't know what to do with it. And we've heard Jamie mention, and David and others, that they've begun to take apart the plane as they try to learn what they can about the technology there. So it's Judy, it's many, many years of feeling like you're the underdog and wanting to be seen as a great power, certainly in Asia, and knowing that the United States is the sole superpower and also throws its weight around in Asia quite a bit.
I asked Andrea Koppel that question because not only is she the CNN State Department right now, she's in Paris where she's covering Secretary of State Colin Powell, but she also was for a number of years CNN's Beijing bureau chief. She spent a number of years reporting on China for CNN. And Andrea, I just would follow up on what you said about how embarrassing it is for the Chinese I think for many in the United States, that's a difficult concept to understand, that they would be embarrassed, because I think many people in the United States assume they do the same thing. But you're saying, in fact, that's not the case.
Well, you know, I think it's the fact that you have a culture, a society that invented gunpowder, invented paper, the printing press, and is today a country that is sort of standing between in some instances, the 19th century, and in others, the 21st century. You have kids that regularly operate are on the web, surfing the web, and can program computers better than most. And then you have peasants, millions of them, living without plumbing, and they're raising chickens and if they're lucky, some sheep and hogs, and have hardly any money whatsoever. And so there's this real concern within the Chinese leadership that they need to maintain stability, and that they want to bring the entire country into the 21st century. And by having a plane like this land in its lap, gave them a rare bit of leverage over the world's most powerful country. And I'm sure that there was a lot of arguing going on behind closed doors amongst those certainly within the People's Liberation Army, who said, why should we give this plane back? Why should we hand over these people? And certainly there were others within the foreign ministry. Cooler heads prevailed, and they appear to have won the argument, at least for now.
All right, Andrea Koppel, as we said, traveling with Secretary of State Colin Powell. She's in Paris as we continue to closely watch the activity outside this Continental jet on the ground at Hainan Island in southern China, looking for any signs that these crew members may have arrived and are about to board. We've seen activity, people running up and down the stairs, but no clear indication yet that the crew members, 24 crew members from that surveillance plane, may be on board. We're going to take a short break, try to get still a better look with another lens on our camera. You'll want to look at that, so stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Would you like to lower your monthly mortgage payments or use the equity in your home to consolidate your credit card or other debts? Just log on to ditech.com or call 1-800-71-FIXED. Today's low fixed rates with 0 points is only 6.990%, APR 7.158%. Lower interest rates, lower monthly payments. It's smart money from ditech.com. Apply online or call us at 1-800-71-FIXED now.
Celebrate, celebrate.
Ask your doctor if Celebrex is right for you.
Celebrate, celebrate.
Client asked me, now that you're part of UBS Warburg, what's it mean to me?
I was on a call this morning with one of their analysts in Singapore. Now we get research right from the source anywhere on the map.
Right, and we've got all this new access to global securities.
One of my clients calls. He wants some information on a software company he may buy. Do you know where?
Maharashtra!
So I hook him up with some UBS Warburg people in the region.
And?
He calls me back in a few days and says,
Dhanyavad, Painweber.
Thank you, UBS Warburg.
What's in the truck? It's kind of hard to explain. Open it up.
Delphi may be new to some people, but we've been around, developing advanced technologies that use electronics to replace mechanical systems and creating new energy solutions for the vehicles of tomorrow. Delphi Automotive Systems, driving tomorrow's technology.
This is Michelle. Today there are no bright lights, no crowds. It's just her, the ice, and her desire to be nothing less than the best in the world. Discipline creates performance. One example is the AIM Basic Value Fund. To learn more, talk to your financial advisor. AIM Funds. The idea is discipline. The purpose is performance. The name is AIM.
For the last 45 minutes, this plane has been sitting on the ground on Hainan Island in southern China, waiting to take the 24 crew members from the U.S. spy plane, surveillance plane that was forced to make an emergency landing there on Hainan Island on April 1st, 11 days ago. The plane is a civilian plane. It's a Continental charter plane, a jet, a 737. And as you can see, we've got a little bit, we keep changing the lenses on this camera, and I've been asking our technical wizards here at CNN what this camera is. All I can tell you so far is that it is a video phone. We started out with fairly distant shots, so it was still dark. It's 6 o'clock in the morning when the plane first landed. It's now about 6:45 there on the ground, local time in at Hainan Island. Haikou is the city where this airport is. You can see the fuel trucks. This is the second fuel truck we've seen in the background. We don't know whether those are the trucks that have been refueling this plane. We do know that it needed to be refueled before it could take off and make the flight back to Guam in the South Pacific, where these 24 reconnaissance plane crew members are scheduled to go. CNN's Lisa Rose Weaver has been talking to us from the scene there. Lisa Rose, now tell us where you are right now in relation to where the plane is at the airport.
Well, we are on an embankment that allows us a view of the entire airport. We are not within the airport grounds. There's a lot of security there, and we thought it would probably be a good idea to get to a place where we could bring you these pictures without being bothered by security. So we are looking at pretty much the entire runway of Haikou's airport. The plane, you see, has been on the ground for about 50 minutes. We understand it's due to refuel and prepare to take off within the hour to return to Guam and then on to Hawaii. We don't know exactly where the crew members are at the moment. As you have noted, there's a lot of activity around the airplane, really almost as soon as it landed. All the pieces began to fall in with refueling trucks arriving, a couple of convoys, presumably Chinese security, and somewhere in there the crew, which given the fact that the plane has already been on the ground for nearly an hour, in all likelihood is somewhere in the vicinity.
Lisa Rose Weaver there describing where she is. She said they're not allowed to get on the ground, actually on the property at the airport, so they are sitting on an embankment watching from some distance. I can tell you the camera that we're using is one of our, I guess you'd say, regular video camera, but it is hooked up to what's called a digital encryption device, and then from that the pictures are sent down a telephone line. So these are digital pictures. This is not normally the way television pictures are transmitted these days. We send them by satellite. They go through the air, and don't ask me to explain that, but these pictures are transmitted by a telephone line, and these are digital pictures. Therefore, there's a slight graininess in what we're seeing, but I have to say they're remarkably clear given compared to what we had when the plane first landed. It was dark, and the camera was focused at a much greater distance, of course, to get the plane landing when it came in from Guam. We're continuing to watch very, very closely as we see the personnel there at the bottom of the steps, people coming and going. You can see what appears to be a man standing there at the door of the airplane with a white shirt, perhaps a crew member for Continental. We can only guess at this point because we're just having to surmise based on what we're looking at. Some more people coming around there, the front of the plane. Don't know yet whether those 24 crew members are any of the people who are around the plane or whether any of them have actually boarded the plane at this point. CNN's Martin Savage is in Hawaii, which is the place where the crew members will be after they take off from China, stop in Guam, and then on to Hawaii. Martin, tell us a little about what will happen to the crew once they land in Hawaii, and when are they expected to get there?
Well, the time frame is not exactly clear at this particular point. As one Navy official pointed out to me, there are still a lot of things that could technically interact here and delay things, not necessarily in China, but in other places along the route. So we don't have a clear time frame as when to expect them here in Hawaii, specifically here at Hickam Air Force Base. However, we do know that when they get here, that they are planning for a low-key arrival. They're not planning to have any massive ceremony here. This is not supposed to be some grand and glorious welcome home. As another official described it, this is the intermediate point for their journey as they make their way back to Whidbey Island in Washington State, which is where the aircraft is based out of. So essentially right now in the background, just out of view, they are setting up some risers. They have fenced off a portion of the area here for the media. But other than that, there is no major plan expected. When the plane arrives here, it's going to be a short ceremony. There may be some music from a military band. It's expected that there will be some high-ranking officers that will greet the crew members as they step off the aircraft. And there may be some words that are spoken. But then after that, the crew will be quickly whisked away and begin the 3 days of debriefing. And that's exactly how the Navy is describing it, 3 days of debriefing. This is the first chance they've had to thoroughly talk to the crew. They want to find out exactly what happened up in the air at the time of the collision and also on the ground after the plane made its emergency landing in China. At the same time, they'll also be undergoing medical examinations. Now, we know that the crew is reported to be in good health. This is simply a precautionary thing. They want to make sure. And then on top of that, they wanted to make sure that the crew members had a little bit of mental breathing room. Somebody described it as an emotional decompression before they went racing back into the arms of their loved ones and the tumultuous reception that they are expected to get when they eventually make it up to Whidbey Island. So in a nutshell, for the next 3 or 4 days, that is what they are going to be about here. And it will begin as soon as the aircraft gets here, but as we mentioned when we started, nobody knows exactly when that's going to be, Judy.
All right, Martin Savage reporting from Hawaii, and we see a little more activity there at this Continental charter jet. They're on the ground at Haikou in Hainan Island. This is the other end. This is the northern end of the island where the U.S. spy plane was forced to make an emergency landing 11 days ago on April the 1st. Some people running now. Maybe we're getting a little closer to the crew members actually boarding this aircraft. We are going to take a short break, continue to keep, well, wait just a minute. We were going to take a break, but now we see what looks like a group of minivans. Let's see, minivans and some other vehicles coming up. This could be the crew members, and we don't want to take our eyes off of it if it is. They seem to be pulling up right to the place at the foot of the plane. Lisa Rose Weaver there on the ground in Haikou. What do you see?
Well, Judy, pretty much what you do. We saw several minivan vehicles driving up to the plane, closer to the plane than almost any of the other vehicles we've seen. There's a couple of police cars, Chinese police cars as well, just sort of on patrol. It is hard to see from here if people, it appears that nobody is yet ascending the stairs. There are people standing at the base of the airplane. There have been people there for the last 40 minutes or so. So it could very well be that the crew is in the vehicles which just pulled up. And when we see people going up those stairs, that will be a pretty good indication that the crew has arrived and is boarding the plane. But at this point, I see some movement on the ground, but I don't see people going up those stairs just yet, Judy.
Yeah, Lisa, I don't know whether you're seeing exactly the same angle we are, but yes, it does look like a cluster of people. You can't tell, 15, 20, perhaps more. They are standing around, milling around there at the bottom of the stairs that do lead up to the door of the airplane. In the meantime, we've now seen 2 of those airport van-looking vehicles pull up. Perhaps these are the vehicles that are carrying the crew members. We're in a position where we're so far away and we don't have any information coming to us from the Chinese government, from Chinese officials on the ground. We're literally having to guess and surmise every step of the way as to what is going on. We just a moment ago, we saw 3 minivans pull up. We saw some people get out of at least one of those, perhaps 2 of those. Now we're seeing these larger vans, the type that you see at airports that take people from one place to another, terminal to another, pull up, and perhaps more people. It's hard to say. But again, as Lisa Rose Weaver was just saying, so far we haven't seen any more people, or we haven't seen a collection of people climb the stairs and actually get on this plane, which is what everyone is watching for. You see a little more activity there. Look, what appears to be a camera flash going off every few seconds. It would be logical that some people are taking pictures at this stage. There appear to be Chinese military. You see some people in uniform. There do appear to be military officers there as part of the group. But there are also some people who are not officers, 1 or 2 gentlemen wearing a white shirt. So far it appears to be mostly men. We know of the 24 crew members on that U.S. reconnaissance plane. 21 of them were men, 3 were women. All of them based at Whidbey Island in Washington State, but this plane had taken off from Okinawa, Japan. Here's another picture. This picture taken from one of the meetings that the crew members had with U.S. military officials. Again, this is the airplane on the ground in Hainan Island in Haikou Airport. This is the northern part of Hainan Island, the other end of the island from where the U.S. surveillance plane was forced to make an emergency landing 11 days ago. You've seen some people run up the stairs just a moment ago, but the mass of these people remain at the bottom of the stairs, milling around, talking to one another. We've seen some pictures, what appear to be pictures taken, because we've seen camera flashes going off. It's about just before 7 o'clock in the morning there in this island south of China, in mainland China. And it looks as if no group movement anyway to get on the airplane yet. CNN's Jamie McIntyre is at the Pentagon. Jamie, you've been talking to folks regularly there. Do they have any more information about when the plane is going to take off?
Well, so far it seems to be going according to what the Pentagon expected. They said the plane would land about 6 a.m. local time there at the airport at Haikou, and that's about exactly when it landed. They said it would probably take between an hour and a half and 2 hours on the ground to refuel the plane and load up the crew. We're just approaching, coming up on about an hour now. It did appear that the plane was successfully refueled. We saw the refueling trucks come up, and then looked like one of them, at least one of them, departed from the scene. So the aircraft may be refueled at this point. The flight back from here to Guam is supposed to take about another 5 hours, and they're estimating that about midnight Eastern time, the plane will probably touch down on U.S. soil at Andersen Air Force Base in Guam. But at this point, Pentagon officials are sort of holding their breath. They're not saying anything. They're trying not to make any comments. They just want to make sure that this part, this very part of the end game here comes off as they expect, with the crew being loaded up and taken off. Again, Judy, this plane brought with it some people. It brought some U.S. military personnel, some military psychologists, some medical personnel to give the crew a check over on the plane, and some of the people who will begin the initial debriefing process as they go through and catalog from each crew member their exact recollection of what happened on the plane. Of course, of particular interest will be interviews with the pilots who were flying the plane to get their account of what happened. But the Pentagon officials tell us that although you should expect to see at least some of the crew members in public, perhaps speaking when they get to Hawaii, at Hickam Air Force Base sometime tomorrow, that their public comments will probably be very limited because the debriefing process is going to go on for a couple of days. U.S. officials want to make sure they have the full story from all of them. Plus, again, the U.S. position is to keep this pretty much a low-key event, holding out hope that perhaps the U.S. will be able to get the $100 million EP-3 Ares surveillance plane, which is still on the ground at that military airstrip at Lingshe Military Air Base, which is south here of Haikou. The Chinese have indicated that they will perhaps return that plane. At least they've agreed to a letter at which they said they would draw up a plan at a meeting a week from today for the quick return of the plane. It's not at all clear how they're going to be able to get that plane back because it is very severely damaged. The more we learn from the crew members in those brief conversations they had, the more the Pentagon was able to determine that this plane was severely damaged. Two of the engines don't work. One of the engines after the collision was, one of the propellers was turning but not providing any thrust. Another one wasn't connected to the drive shaft anymore and was just what they call pinwheeling. So there were two engines, the number 1 and number 3 engines weren't working. Also the flaps of the plane were damaged.
Jamie, it appears to be that there are a group of people going up, and we can only surmise, but I would have to say that it's a good chance that those are the crew members, the 24 crew members, because we see a succession of people I haven't been able to count. Perhaps that is one part of the 24 who just moved up in a group. But again, this is only a guess, only a surmisal on our part. We are too far away because of this camera and the distance that we are required to keep from this airplane. They do all appear, those going up the plane appear to be wearing a green fatigue type garb. Perhaps they're all wearing the same type thing. I don't know whether that's what they would have been wearing when they were on the surveillance plane or not, but I would say by now we might have seen 24 people go up, but I was not able to count. Perhaps somebody else has a quicker eye than I do. Jamie, refresh us, if you will, and we see one more crew member going up now. Jamie, refresh us, if you will, on what the positions were that these crew members had on that plane. What were they doing? I mean, besides the pilot and the people involved in flying the EP-3, what were the other people doing on that plane?
Well, Judy, let me just comment first to say that it appeared that the crew members, if those were in fact the crew members, which we have every reason to believe they were in fact wearing their flight suits, which are the standard. It's sort of a one-piece green jumpsuit, which is what they would normally be wearing on the plane while they're conducting their mission. Interestingly, I think that it's hard to tell from this picture, but U.S. officials reported that they didn't have any patches on their jumpsuits. These flight suits are designed so that the patches are attached with Velcro and can be removed so as just one more sanitizing procedure that's done before the plane completes its emergency landing so that there's no other identifying marks on the uniform. But that said, this crew was the crew of an electronic surveillance plane. They listened to all kinds of signals. 3 of the people are pilots and they're responsible for flying the plane. And then the rest of the crew, essentially in the back as they say, are stationed at various positions around the plane to monitor, to use different devices to monitor transmissions. And this is what's called signals intelligence, or SIGINT, as they call it at the Pentagon. They're trying to listen to voice communications, to the frequencies of radars. To some extent, they also stimulate those radars. When the plane comes by and they're picked up by radar, they can tell how the Chinese, how soon they're detected, how the Chinese react to it, and that all provides valuable intelligence information. In addition, they're looking for anything that would be of interest to the United States, new Chinese military capabilities, new ships, submarines, the positioning of missiles along the coast. China has been, in recent years, positioning more missiles in sort of a threatening manner that might be seen as a threat to Taiwan. So that's what this crew was carrying out. And the U.S. says that they were doing this in international airspace, well beyond the 12-mile limit recognized as in international law, and that they have a perfect right to do this. In fact, that any country could also do this
this along the U.S. coast if they had the capability. Most countries, however, do not.
Most countries don't have the capability.
That's right. I mean, the U.S. has probably some of the most sophisticated eavesdropping and surveillance equipment in the world. This is something that the Soviet Union used to do back during the Cold War. It would conduct surveillance like this, and the Chinese also do a limited amount of intelligence gathering, mostly using ships, listening from ships outside the limits, international limits, in international waters, but they don't have the same capability to fly up and down the U.S. coast, and that's one of the reasons why the Chinese are a bit annoyed about the way the U.S. has them under constant surveillance.
All right, we've been talking with Jamie McIntyre at the Pentagon, and as Jamie and I were speaking just a moment ago, we saw what appeared to be, could have been a couple of dozen crew members, U.S. Crew members from the spy plane that was forced to land in China 11 days ago. Again, we are far enough away, we cannot absolutely confirm to you that that's who they were, but there were enough of them, and as you heard Jamie say, the green uniform, green garb they had on is consistent with the uniform that the crew would have been wearing on the plane that had to land on Hainan Island, the EP-3. CNN reporter Lisa Rose Weaver, you were there on the ground. You got a closer look than we do.
Yes, well, Judy, actually, the video phone gave me a better look than my own naked eye. It's an amazing technology. I stepped just a couple of steps away to the truck which we're operating from to look at our monitor, and I could see on the monitor more clearly the people in the lighter green uniforms boarding the plane. The color of the uniforms is distinctly lighter than the Chinese military people in darker olive green, and we have certainly not seen a group of them boarding the plane in any case. There have been some individuals going up and down in preparation. So I think it's quite safe to say that the crew is on board at this point. The plane has been on the ground for just more than an hour, and it was due to then fly back to Guam about 1 hour from now, after refueling and safety checks on the airplane. So we will be watching here until it takes off. Judy?
And again, Lisa Rose Weaver clarifying for us earlier, this airport, this is a civilian airport in Haikou, which is the provincial capital of Hainan Island, and it is, and you can see on this map here, this airport is at the northern end of that island, Hainan Island, where the U.S. spy plane, surveillance plane, had to make an emergency landing 11 days ago. The EP-3 was at the southern end of the island. That plane still sits on the runway, as far as we know. And the crew members were watching someone else go up the steps and almost trip as he did trip as he was going up. These crew members were brought up to Haikou, and this is the place where they have been detained at what's been called a military guest house for the last 10, 11 days since their plane came down. We've been watching as a crowd of people have been gathered there at the base or the foot of the stairway that leads up to this Continental civilian charter jet. Chinese wanted a civilian plane, not a military plane, to come and pick up these 24 crew members. That had to be, we didn't see anybody visibly celebrating or raising their arms in a sense of excitement or celebration, but you have to know, as those people climbed on the plane, they had to feel an enormous sense of relief. We know that the plane had to be refueled, and we watched as a couple of fuel trucks came up and then pulled away, so we have to assume now the plane has been refueled. The crew members evidently are on board, so it may be just a matter of minutes before this plane prepares to pull away and to take off. We were originally told it would be on the ground 2 hours, an hour and a half. It's now been on the ground. It's a little after 7 o'clock in the morning on Hainan Island in southern China. It's about 7 after 7 in the morning, 12 hours ahead of Eastern Time in the United States, where we are. And you're watching as so many of the people who were there at the foot of the stairs milling around as the crew members climbed the stair. Now you're seeing the door has closed and the stairs are being pulled away from the 737. So we are looking, presumably, at an imminent departure. CNN's David Ensor is at the State Department in Washington.
Judy, I was just talking to an official upstairs in this building a moment ago, and he said that the State Department Operations Center had been in touch with their people there at the airport about 10 minutes ago, and that the officials said that the crew were at that point just finished with with handling the sort of exit paper matters. I don't know exactly what exit papers were involved, but signing the transfer documents or whatever, and that the process was either completed or about to be completed. So that would seem to jive with the pictures we're seeing here, and would suggest, as we've been reporting, that the crew has completed those procedures and has gotten on the plane, and that they'll be taking off soon. Judy?
That's David Ensor at the State Department in Washington. Lisa Rose Weaver, you are at the airport there now. How many other planes are in the vicinity of this Continental jet?
Well, the Continental jet is by itself in what appears to be another section of the airport. The main commercial part is off camera. I don't think you can see it. There are several airplanes. They've been there since we arrived. No other airplanes have landed since we've been here. This one is separate from the main terminal of the airport. We saw that there was a fair amount of security, Chinese security, following the convoy. This involves the Chinese military. Presumably, it's the military which is, if you will, handing over the 24 Americans, allowing them to leave. So we would expect that there would be a lot of security. That is why we are where we are, so that we're able at least to maintain a good view of this and not be forced to move on. Now, we've just seen the door of the airplane close, the ladder being pulled away. We're expecting to see the airplane begin its taxi toward the runway any moment. This is now the end of 11 days of diplomatic effort at a lot of levels, Beijing, Washington, and here in Hainan, toward the release of these Americans. Judy?
This plane took 5.5 hours to get to Hainan Island from Guam. It'll presumably be about the same distance, give or take some, to bring the crew members back, or not back, but to Guam. And from there, the plane, or perhaps another plane, will fly them on to Hawaii, where they will spend some time being certainly checked over by medical personnel, make sure that they are in good health, although we've been told by the U.S. Officials who've been meeting with them over the last 10, 11 days that they appear to be in good health. They say they are have been treated well. They say they are feeling fine, but of course the U.S. will want to verify that as the best it can. You can see the picture tells the story here. This plane landed an hour and 10 minutes ago approximately. It's been sitting on the ground at this civilian airport in northern Hainan Island, the provincial capital of Haikou. We watched as the plane sat there for a while. Then as the light came on, as the day began and we could see a little better, we saw just a few moments ago, we saw minivans and then other larger airport type vans pull up, and finally we saw what appeared to be a few dozen people dressed in military uniforms, U.S. Military garb, that what they would have been wearing as they were crew on the U.S. spy plane, climb the stairs, get on the plane. We saw the door close, and now this plane about ready to leave. This is the picture. This is what it looked like a few minutes ago when the crew, it was just about 15 after, no, that's the time now. This is what it looked like when the crew, what appeared to be the U.S. crew, climbed on board this plane. CNN's Jamie McIntyre is at the Pentagon.
Well, that's right. We see here the crew members who are wearing their flight suits, their one-piece green flight suits, the normal attire for wearing while you're conducting one of these surveillance missions, boarding the steps, getting on the Continental Airlines charter jet for the flight back to Guam. This whole transfer procedure is going just about as the Pentagon had expected. The plane landed right on the dot of 6 o'clock, right when it was expected to land at the Haikou, the international airport at Haikou on the northern part of Hainan Island. And after dispensing with some of the paperwork that had to be done, the crew boarded the plane. You could see them going up the steps. Now the steps have already been pushed away and the plane is sealed up, and it just remains for it to take off. Pentagon officials say that they're not going to say much about this until they're absolutely sure that the plane is clear of Chinese airspace, that has been able to take off, that the crew members are in fact on their way back to U.S. soil at Andersen Air Force Base in Guam. But so far this has been going precisely according to schedule.
U.S. officials have refrained, certainly the White House, the Pentagon, the State Department have refrained from calling these crew members hostages, although there are members of Congress, particularly longtime Republican Congressman Henry Hyde and other conservative Republicans who have used that word. The administration has asked privately that they be called detainees. Whatever you call them, they are on their way off of Chinese soil. Not yet, but they're moving in that direction. The plane appears to be backing up, getting into a position where it can taxi on its own. Perhaps it's being pulled at this point. We're only looking at the front part of the plane. This is the civilian airport in Haikou on Hainan Island, Haikou being the provincial capital of this Chinese province. It is called Hainan Island. It is the province of Hainan. Lisa Rose Weaver, you are there at the airport.
Yes, well, the plane, as you say, is backing up. It's pretty amazing, really, how quickly this departure has come together. It was just more than 12 hours ago when the Chinese government announced through Beijing, through the foreign ministry in Beijing, that the 24 crew members would be released, and now the next morning, here they are on the airplane, which is about to taxi. So work was done very quickly by the U.S. diplomats who have been on the ground here for more than a week, pressing for the release of the American crew. We're very busy arranging these last-minute details to ensure that this could happen. This could happen very quickly. Now, although the Americans are about to leave Chinese soil, in a sense, the impasse between China and the United States is not completely over. Chinese President Jiang Zemin was speaking from Uruguay yesterday, saying he hopes the U.S. side will, quote, adopt a serious attitude, end quote, to this incident. The Chinese tone has shifted in the last few days from insisting the U.S. accept complete responsibility and that the U.S. is to blame for the incident, shifting now to, okay, deal with this seriously. The two sides, China and the U.S., are due to meet on April 18th. And there we expect that the issue of the EP-3 surveillance craft and when it will be released back to the United States, that issue will come up at that meeting. And China is expected to bring up the issue of U.S. surveillance flights. That is, of course, how this all began. This was a U.S. surveillance flight in the South China Sea that's been a major concern on the part of China's military for a long time. That concern crystallized very dramatically when the collision occurred, and so this entire incident will have given China an opportunity to bring forth that issue at the upcoming meeting. Judy?
It's Lisa Rose Weaver speaking to us from the airport on Hainan Island. Jamie McIntyre at the Pentagon.
Well, it does look like this Continental Airlines plane has been pushed back and is getting ready to take off. Pentagon officials tell us that the trip back from Hainan Island to Guam will take a little less time than the trip over. There were some strong headwinds on the way over that caused it to be about a 5.5-hour flight. They anticipate once this plane gets off the ground, it'll be about 4.5 hours before it touches down in Guam. That would put its arrival in Guam at just right about midnight Eastern time. Just about, assuming it takes off in the next 10 minutes or so, which it looks like it is preparing to do. And as for the question of whether these detainees were detainees or hostages, or as somebody called them here, accidental tourists, the Pentagon says that the reason that they would classify them as detainees is that they had some access to them and that they were generally well treated. They said that's not usually the case with hostages, but it was getting dangerously close to the point where more and more people were beginning to think of them as hostages, and U.S. officials believe it was fortuitous that the resolution of this standoff came when it did, before it began to degenerate to a point where people were really getting angry and calling, more and more people were calling them hostages. You see the plane moving now.
That's right. As we listen to Jamie McIntyre, who's all the way over in Washington at the Pentagon, we're watching this charter plane, a civilian charter, Continental Airlines 737, moving from the place where it picked up what appeared to be the 24 crew members from the American spy plane, and is now turning so that it can get into a position to take off. And you just heard Jamie say this flight from Hainan Island, southern China, is expected to take about something less than 5 hours or so. On the way to Guam, there the crew members will, I believe, be transferred to another plane. Jamie, is that right? They'll go to another plane
That's
for
right.
a flight to Hawaii?
That's right, Judy. They'll transfer to a C-17, one of the U.S. State-of-the-art cargo transport planes, for the flight, which will take about 6 hours or so from Guam to Hickam Air Force Base in Hawaii, arriving sometime tomorrow morning Hawaii time during the daylight hours there. So they are expecting to complete that transfer from this plane to a U.S. military plane. Again, a U.S. military plane was not sent to pick them up because the Chinese requested, or the agreement called for, a civilian airliner to come pick them up, not a U.S. military transport.
Appears to be so far nothing is delaying the departure of this plane. It did sit in a position there for a while as it was refueled and then as the crew members climbed on board, but now it seems to be moving without delay to a position where it can take off and leave Chinese soil. These crew members came to China. You have to say, when their plane landed, I'm sure they all wondered whether they were going to survive, because the surveillance plane, the EP-3, was damaged severely, Jamie, and all of them had to have seen their life flash in front of their eyes.
Yeah, we started to talk a little bit about some of that damage to the plane, and each time they met with some of the crew members, they learned a little bit more about how damaged it was. I mentioned before 2 of the engines weren't working, 2 of the 4 engines, but the pilot also had very limited control of some of the basic controls, the ailerons, which help steer the plane One of them had a hole in it, the other one, the bolts were loose on it. The pilot wasn't sure whether they would work at all, or if he tried to use them, whether the plane would lurch to one side or the other. The elevators, which are the movable flaps on the tail, got it wrapped around one of the sophisticated antennas, and they weren't working either. That controls the up and down movement of the plane. And the pilot was also working without an airspeed indicator indicating how fast he was going, and several other instruments weren't working as well at all. So landing a plane like that under those circumstances is very difficult. And go ahead, Judy.
Jamie, I was just going to say, we're watching the plane as it taxis into a position where it can take off, and we're seeing that flash of yellow light at the belly of the plane. I'm wondering, I'm assuming that's normal, but I don't remember seeing that on other planes. Can somebody help me with what that is? Lisa Rose Weaver there, or Jamie, can you tell me?
I think that what we're seeing there is, this is a combination, there's a blinking light on the bottom of the plane. Normally it doesn't look that dramatic, but because we're seeing this through the video phone technology, which has a compressed digital image, it's magnifying the effect of that flash. But you can see that it's basically a beacon on the bottom of the plane, which helps identify it, and it just looks more dramatic, I believe, in this picture. It looks almost like a flash of fire there. You just saw it again. But I think what we're simply seeing is a visual effect from that blinking light on the bottom of the plane.
Well, that's why I mentioned it, and I want to tell our audience again, this video phone that allows us to see these pictures. This is not conventional television picture transmission. We have a video camera there, but this camera is hooked up to what's called a digital encryption device. And what comes out of that is sent down a regular telephone line. So these are television pictures through a telephone line. It's the reason they look a little grainy, but nevertheless, we're glad to have them, because it's the only way we could bring you these pictures from Hainan Island. Lisa Rose Weaver is there at the airport. Lisa Rose.
Yes, well, we expect the plane to take off really any moment now. It is, we're not sure from which direction, perhaps back in our direction. It's got to turn around and pick up speed. It must have been, for the crew members, an amazing journey. We can't imagine really what they're thinking at this moment, but 11 days ago they crash-landed in China on a military surveillance craft that was amazing that they could land it. Now they are taking off in a civilian 737 back to Guam and then to Hawaii. During most of this time, they have been able to get word from their friends and family via printed email messages. Fortunately for them, they've been in very good physical and mental health from what has been reported to us. But surely they're going to be, as you said, Judy, extremely relieved to put this behind them and to leave. Judy?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say we can all speculate about what the crew members will be doing when that plane actually takes off from Chinese soil, but also then beyond that leaves Chinese airspace, which is a different moment. It's 12 miles, Jamie McIntyre, before they technically reach international airspace after they leave Hainan Island?
That's right, Judy. It's about 12 miles, but of course the Chinese have extended claims into the South China Sea and a lot of claims on the ground, international waters. They've claimed that they have jurisdiction over some of those islands out there, but that is part of the dispute, although China backed down from its claim that this incident took place in Chinese airspace and simply said that the U.S. plane violated Chinese airspace when it made that emergency landing. But technically, when it gets about 12 miles offshore, it'll be out of Chinese airspace into international airspace.
Well, it has been, it is, just to say right now, it's about 7:25, 7:30 in the morning in southern China, where this plane carrying the U.S. crew members is just about to take off. And we think the plane is about to reach the end of a taxiway, at which point it'll turn, and then we'll know what runway it's going to be on and where it's going to take off. It's been an extraordinary experience for these 24 Americans who landed that Navy EP-3E on Hainan after a collision, mid-air collision with a Chinese fighter jet on April 1st, a collision that led to the death, evidently, of a Chinese pilot. His plane crashed into the ocean. He has not been found. This plane, their plane, however, not this plane, but their plane, a very different airplane, landed at the southern part of Hainan Island. CNN's David Ensor is at the State Department as we watch, at least for a moment, this commercial plane round a corner and we can't see it anymore. David?
Yes, just a couple of things, Judy. One, I gather from State Department officials that Ted Gong, who is the senior consular officer who's been dealing with this, he's one of the two American officials besides General Seelock who has been at all the meetings with the crew members. He is confirming to the State Department now that all 24 Americans are on that Continental jet. He watched them go on, he counted them, he counted the documents. He's personally confirming that all the Americans are on that plane. That's point one. Point two, U.S. officials are telling me that their estimate is that the plane will leave Chinese airspace approximately a quarter of an hour, 15 minutes roughly, after it takes off. Judy?
All right, David Ensor, that's consistent, I think, with what we've been talking about the last few minutes. We were talking about the 12 miles before you reach international water. Here comes the plane taking off. This is the plane carrying 24 U.S. crew members from the Navy surveillance plane forced to land in China 11 days ago. This plane carrying them, it's a civilian aircraft, and they have now taken off from Chinese soil. They are on their way to Guam, and from there to Hawaii, and then back to the United States. If I had to guess, there may be some high fives on that airplane right now, even though, as we just heard David Ensor say, it'll be another 10, 15 minutes before they're technically out of Chinese airspace. They have to be celebrating in some way among themselves. Jamie McIntyre at the Pentagon.
Well, Pentagon officials now updating us on what they believe will be the travel schedule for this plane. They say it should take about 4.5 hours from now for this plane to make it to Andersen Air Force Base on Guam. That's a little shorter than the flight over from Guam because of favorable winds that were against them on the flight over. So that puts it into Guam at somewhere around midnight Eastern time. And then there will be a time for the crew to transfer to a U.S. military plane, a little bit of downtime on the ground, but officials are not planning any sort of ceremony or public appearance there. And then the plane, the U.S. Air Force C-17 will take the crew the rest of the way from Guam to Hickam Air Force Base in Hawaii. And now we're saying that Pentagon officials are telling us that they think it's about 8 hours for that flight from Guam to Hickam, and would expect their arrival to be about 6:30 a.m. Local time in Hickam Air Force Base in Hawaii. So again, the plane will be carrying the 24 crew members of the EP-3, has taken off from the island and is en route to Guam, and will be back on U.S. soil in just about 4.5 hours. Judy?
That's right, Jamie. We just watched that plane take off. We're going to take a break, and we'll be back with more live coverage of the release of the 24 American crew members.
What if our chief executive had to run the country all by himself?
We're still awaiting
no speechwriters, no cabinet, all by his lonesome. So why are you trying to manage your finances the same way? With Merrill Lynch Unlimited Advantage, your personal financial consultant becomes your chief of staff to help you plan, invest, and bank, all for a simple fee. A simple fee, a simpler life. Who couldn't benefit from that?
I got in! I'm actually going to med school. Actually, You're not. We lost our college fund. Where'd it go?
Someone decided to try a little day trading on his own.
I thought it'd be fun.
Don't worry about it, honey. You never look good in white anyway.
Next time, don't go it alone. Ask your financial advisor about the fund so many financial experts choose. Alliance Capital, the investment professional's choice.
They both worked their way up the ladder. Same executive perks, same six-figure salaries. So why does one look forward to early retirement, while the other looks forward to the 15th and the 31st? Some people already know our financial representatives excel at a lot more than life insurance. Northwestern Mutual Financial Network. Are you there yet?
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed.
Before you can inspire,
We hold these truths to be self-evident,
before you can touch,
that all men are created equal.
you must first connect. And the company that connects more of the world is Alcatel, a leader in communication networks.
Bob, can you hear me in the back? Okay.
Think big, and the possibilities are endless.
We've had a pretty good year for a company our size.
At Key, we'll bring together the right people with the right resources to help you achieve anything, even taking your business to the next level.
We've had a pretty good year for a company that our size.
Key, achieve anything.
This was the picture just about 6-7 minutes ago in Hainan Island, China. 24 U.S. crew members from the spy plane forced to make a landing on that island 11 days ago. They are now free of Chinese soil. They are on a Boeing 737, a Continental Airlines charter plane, on their way to Guam. From there, they'll go on to Hawaii and then on to the United States. This happened just 5-6 minutes ago. Joining us on the ground now at Haikou, with the provincial capital of Hainan Island, CNN's Lisa Rose Weaver. Lisa Rose, you watched this whole thing unfold. Are you able to hear me right now? Can't tell whether she's... We can see you.
Yes. Well, the plane carrying the 24 Americans just took off some 5 minutes ago. Just at about the time that it was leaving the runway, Chinese police and security began to move in. They are very aware that we are here. They have done nothing so far to force us to leave. We are among a few journalists at the same location overlooking the airport runway. As I said, the police security have moved in. They are calling for reinforcements to come, and presumably they will try to move us away. It has taken them this long to respond to the fact that we are here, so the timing has been pretty good. We were able to bring you live pictures of the plane's departure. In the meantime, we'll just wait and see what happens here. The plane has left. It flew away more than 5 minutes ago, carrying all 24 American crew members on it.
Lisa Weaver there on the ground at the airport in Haikou, the provincial capital of Hainan Island. I have to say, good work to you and to the crew working with you, manning this video phone, this digital camera that brings us the picture through telephone lines. It's a new technology to some of us. You're just looking at the route that this plane is going to take, or at least that the crew will be taking. All 24 of them, they're now off of Chinese soil. They're on their way to Guam. I believe it was Jamie McIntyre. Jamie, are you able to hear me?
Yes, I do,
You
Judy.
said it's about 15 minutes before they are technically out of Chinese airspace. Is that correct?
Actually, yeah, CNN's David Ensor reported that from a State Department official, but I believe that's absolutely right. It's about 12 miles, and they need to get off, get some altitude, and they should be out of Chinese airspace very quickly. I should point out, when we look at that map of the 3 hops that the crew will be taking, first from Hainan Island to Guam, then to Hawaii, and then you see the arrow indicates the home base of Whidbey Island in the state of Washington. The Pentagon says it's not clear that all the crew members will go on to Whidbey Island, because some of them are actually based in Japan, and their families are at the Misawa Air Base in Japan. Although there's been some thinking that it would be nice to have everybody all together for sort of a reunion at Whidbey Island. That, of course, won't take place until after the crew has been fully debriefed at Hickam Air Force Base in Hawaii. And again, Pentagon officials tell us that based on the fact that the plane appears to have taken off on time, it will get to Guam somewhere around midnight Eastern time, just about 4.5 hours from now. And then it's anticipated there'll be some downtime on the ground there, and the plane will, another plane, a C-17, will take off, arriving at Hickam Air Force Base about 6:30 a.m. local time in Hawaii. I should say, by the way, that there aren't a lot of people at the Pentagon at this hour, but the very important people are still here. And I'm told by one officer that down in the area, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, where some of the people who work for the Joint Chiefs of Staff were watching the departure of the plane on CNN, that a little cheer went up when the plane took off on the ground and headed out of Chinese airspace, an indication of some of the relief felt here at the Pentagon.
Lisa Weaver there on the ground. You're looking at, this is the picture of the scene just about 10 minutes ago when the plane actually took off. Lisa Weaver, our reporter there on the ground, is with us now. Lisa, tell us a little bit about the scene there. How many reporters were there? Were they all Americans? Were there other nationalities? What about the Chinese? Who was there watching all this?
Well, watching this, it's hard to say exactly how many reporters were staked out at various points around the airport. A couple of Hong Kong television crews joined us here at our vantage point not long after we arrived. But in terms of international media attention on this story, obviously there has been a lot of it. It was a very interesting story from the standpoint that international journalists were able to come into China often without the requisite journalist visas. Normally, to operate as a journalist in China, you have to apply, you get a visa in your passport, it identifies you as a journalist. One takes that on a story-by-story basis for those who are not based in China. So the fact that the authorities allowed so many journalists to operate here, the fact that they allowed us to provide live coverage from Haikou says something perhaps about the fact that the Chinese saw this coverage in their interest to some degree. Now, we don't have any official comment from the Chinese government on what their view of the international coverage has been, but whether or not they agree with the way international journalists have reported it, nonetheless, in some sense, China's side of the story has got out. And so it's been somewhat unprecedented in that respect, the relative freedom of movement and operation covering this story. The fact is, most of the restriction has been restrictions on information from the American side. You can hear an airplane taking off overhead.
Well, you can tell.
The real informational, Judy.
I was just going to say, you can tell it's an airport. Lisa, before we leave you for just a moment, is there any way to turn the camera around just quickly to show us some of this equipment that you're using, this video phone, or is it so connected to the camera itself that it can't look back at itself?
Yeah, we can turn around the camera and show you some of the video phone equipment. It's if we just turn the camera over this way and show the equipment, the video phone equipment in the van that we're working from. Yeah, that's I don't know if you can see from there the monitor or not. It's in the front seat of our van, and it functions basically as a video dial pad. It's an amazingly simple machine to learn how to use. So yeah, this is a fairly easy setup. It's easy for us to put up. We've been able to bring you live pictures on relatively short notice now as I speak. Police reinforcements have arrived. They definitely know that we are here. Don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to be speaking to you. There are several uniformed police officers approaching. They have been called in to, well, probably to move us out. This is why we chose this vantage point over the airport, so that we would not have this kind of interference earlier in the day. Let's turn the camera now to give you a picture of what's going on here. Several police officers have just shown up. Now, this may look somewhat dramatic. The fact is, in China, it's fairly routine. International journalists and even Chinese journalists work under a lot of restrictions. This is not a place that is very open to free reporting or free dissemination of information. We did not apply to come to this location to film the airport because, of course, we didn't know exactly where we would be. Some local residents probably tipped off these people that we were here. We are here with some other international broadcasters as well. The situation is fairly calm. They're just questioning our drivers, trying to ascertain exactly what is going on here. And I would imagine that before too long, we're going to be asked to move on. Judy?
Well, Lisa, we don't want to detain you. We don't want to keep you if they are needing to talk to you. But I do believe it is typical in China that the press have permission to use a camera wherever it goes. So that, as you say, is quite typical.
Yes, that's right. That's right. I mean, this is, just as I was saying, that this has been an unusual story in terms of our ability to operate in Hainan. It just goes to show that there are contrasts here. Yes, we were able to give you live pictures and live shots from the 16th floor of the hotel, where most of the other journalists and the U.S. diplomats were staying over the course of the last few days. The local authorities knew that we were there. It's hard to imagine that they would not. Many government officials and ministries also receive CNN. They know how to put two and two together. The fact that they allowed us to stay, as I said, I believe, there's no way to confirm this, of course, but we believe it has to do with the fact that in some sense it served China's interest to get this story in the international headlines. China does have its view and its position in this whole issue. So allowing us to broadcast was one thing. What we're dealing, I'll stop now while this. The police we're dealing with is really another matter, a much more local matter. They likely don't really know what we're doing. There are just a lot of journalists standing around with cameras and tripods, and from their perspective, it looks strange. They don't know why we're here, so they're asking questions. Judy?
Well, Lisa, we appreciate your explaining this to us. I think it's always helpful not only to us who work in television journalism, but also to our audience to understand.
Yes, Judy, we are being told now quite forcefully that it's time to leave.
All right.
A couple of gentlemen have walked up, and now one is very shortly going to physically close down our camera. You see him approaching the lens now.
All right.
This is probably the end of the show from where we stand. Again, the American crew members took off now at least 20 minutes ago. They are very close to being out of Chinese airspace. We've been able to bring you this much of the story, and it's
It appears that we've just lost the picture from Haikou, the capital of Hainan Island. Our reporter Lisa Rose Weaver, you heard her talking just until literally seconds ago about the fact that the police, the local police in that area, were asking a lot of questions about why they were there. They had been allowed to do what they did, to set up the camera, to get the pictures of the plane landing, to pick up the U.S. Surveillance crew that had been detained in China, get pictures of the plane taking off. But once it was clearly daybreak, the authorities descended and wanted to know why they didn't have permission in China. It is typical, it's traditional to get that kind of permission before you are allowed to operate as a news crew. But we want to thank Lisa Weaver, our reporter there on the ground, and her crew. We got I think a pretty good look at the van where the video phone, this new, as far as I'm concerned, new device that allows us to take video pictures, to run them through what's called a digital encryption device, and then send them along regular telephone lines. They are digital pictures. They're not as clear as the picture that you're seeing now, but it's a way to get a picture when you really want one, and we really wanted one. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we hope to bring you a little bit of Crossfire. I'll be right back.
Client asked me, now that you're part of UBS Warburg, what's it mean to me?
I was on a call this morning with one of their analysts in Singapore. Now we get research right from the source anywhere on the map.
Right, and we've got all this new access to global securities.
One of my clients calls. He wants some information on a software company he may buy. Do you know where?
Maharashtra!
So I hook him up with some UBS Warburg people in the region.
And?
He calls me back in a few days and says,
Thundervad, Painweber.
Thank you, UBS Warburg.
When you buy tires, you're not just buying rubber and steel. You want the confidence that your tires will get you to your destination safely. I'm John Lampe, new CEO of Firestone, and I'd like to introduce Making It Right, our action plan for the future. It's dedicated to gaining your trust and includes important upgrades in manufacturing and quality control. Firestone wants to make it right because your safety is our primary concern.
Right now, some of America's most respected companies are growing their businesses using e-commerce marketplaces powered by Purchase Pro. Like Netscape's Net Business Marketplace, where businesses access thousands of buyers and suppliers across an unlimited range of industries, with the immediate ability to buy and sell right on the web. It's simple, it's secure. E-commerce solutions powered by Purchase Pro, where business takes off.
When your business is small, managing infrastructure and relationships is easy. But with growth, complexity develops. Friction points arise. Efficiencies are lost. That's why 90% of the Fortune 500 use solutions from Peregrine. Peregrine software eliminates friction points. The right people have the right tools and the right answers, and then they can really perform. Peregrine Systems. Frictionless business.
The typical discount broker offers 8,500 research reports online. Which begs the question, who's going to help you make sense of 8,500 research reports online? With Merrill Lynch Unlimited Advantage, your personal financial consultant will help you plan, invest, and bank, all for a simple fee. A simple fee, a simpler life. That should make your family very happy indeed.
Just about 23 minutes ago, this was the scene. An airplane carrying all 24 crew members from an American and Navy spy plane, surveillance plane, forced to land in China 11 days ago. They are free. They are off of Chinese soil. They took off just before 7:30 in the morning, Hainan or Haikou time, which is Haikou being the provincial capital of Hainan Island. They'll be in that plane for about 4.5 hours. That's how long it takes them to fly to Guam, and there they will transfer from the commercial, continental commercial jet, a charter plane, to a military plane and fly from there on to Hawaii. Joining us now, CNN White House correspondent Kelly Wallace, who has a statement from the president. Kelly?
Well, yes, Judy, we do know, in fact, that President Bush is definitely aware those 24 crew members are out of China and en route to Guam. The president at this very hour is en route on Air Force One from North Carolina, headed to Andrews Air Force Base. He was spending the day in North Carolina. Apparently, he was having dinner in a conference room on Air Force One, and he was listening to CNN. And then when he heard that CNN was reporting, and he was obviously listening to CNN report that those crew members, yes, in fact, had been released and had been on that plane out of China, he was with his national security advisor, Dr. Condoleezza Rice, and a U.S. official telling us that the president looked at Dr. Rice and said, quote, "You did a fine job. Congratulations. Our team didn't turn the first incident into a crisis." So clearly lots of relief and happiness here at the White House that those crew members are out of China, but also, Judy, clearly some happiness as well. This clearly the first international test for this administration. Senior administration officials telling us that from the get-go, the president and his senior aides did not turn this into a crisis. They kept to business as usual. They were all on the same page, all backing the same strategy. Even one senior official telling us earlier tonight that the president, more than maybe some of his other advisors, really felt that this strategy would lead to a successful conclusion. So happiness tonight on the part of the president. Judy?
And just quickly, Kelly, a response from the White House to the criticism that's already coming in from some corners of the conservatives in the Republican Party, saying the president, the administration, should not have said it was sorry.
Well, clearly the administration expecting that criticism, certainly not surprised to hear some of that. But clearly this White House was saying, senior official telling us earlier, very happy to have this resolved now, and that it didn't drag on any longer, and that it wasn't continuing when Congress was coming back. This administration fearing it would face a very bad or difficult domestic situation on its hands if this was still going on and Congress was coming back.
Kelly?
That criticism would mount. Back to you, Judy.
Kelly, I'm going to interrupt because joining us on the phone now from Hainan Island, Lisa Weaver, whom we last saw by video phone. Lisa, we want to make sure you are all right. You're on a mobile phone.
Yes, well, thank you for asking, Judy. Yes, we're all fine. We're just being asked to move on by the police. They've arrived. They're quite calm. This is a routine. This is a routine, basically, of reporting in China. We go through it again and again. As I said earlier, really, in the main, it's amazing how much freedom we have had in the course of the last several days in reporting this story, in bringing live pictures to viewers. It's probably fair to say unprecedented for China reporting, which is spontaneous as it was. Many people deciding to just come down to Hainan without first telling the authorities. So in that sense, yes, we were granted quite a lot of freedom. What we're dealing with right now on the ground is a relatively simple police matter. They didn't know what we were doing here. And so the timing has been good. The plane in the air now for more than 20 minutes, and we are just about to leave the airport as well. Judy?
Lisa Weaver, we're gonna let you go and respond as you must to the military, or rather local police there on Hainan Island. Once again, we have watched in the last 25-30 minutes. This plane took off, a civilian charter jet carrying all 24 crew members who were forced to make an emergency landing in China 11 days ago. After 11 intense days of negotiations, they are free. CNN will have live coverage of their landing in Guam sometime after 11:30 Eastern this evening. I'm Judy Woodruff in New York.
Tonight on Larry King Live, he took 60 Minutes and changed the face of broadcast news forever. 60 Minutes executive producer Don Hewitt, tonight 9 Eastern on CNN.
We've got a lot of news to report.
The start of the trading day.
We are in record territory.
Interest rates are heading higher. There's more information now, moving faster than ever before. Earlier in the day. Keep up with CNBC's Market Watch.
The markets are rallying with quite a bit of force.
Minute by minute, watch your stocks.
Market Watch, Market Watch, Market Watch, Market Watch.
Weekdays at 10 a.m. Eastern on CNBC. Profit from it.
Harris Investor Line, a better kind of discount broker, a direct broker. Call toll-free 1-866-234-LINE.